When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
All right, yeah, our roster looks great on paper. Whoop-de hell. All right. But at the end of the day, we better be a good team. And you start building that during this time of the year.
Get your sorry ass up! Get your sorry ass up!
Doing a lot of talking with somebody that ain't do today. Doing a lot of talking.
Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
I'm better than you. My 24 years of life, I'm better at life than you.
Dave! Time to go to work!
I ain't 36. I ain't never seen you before. Hop. Better go tell the coach you need some help. We gonna expose you, boy. All right, we coming at your ass.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Roundtable.
Let's go! Let's go!
And it's a Monday episode, so we will be having Mr. Matthew Fox. You can follow him at Nighthawk7734, back with us off vacation, and Mr. Dennis Bennett. You can follow him at Culture_Coach. Unfortunately, this is a little bit of a heavy episode to start out, as we obviously lost one of the greats, not just in sports, but in the NBA, in Kobe Bryant yesterday. So Matt is here with me. Not even going to ramble on about anything. We're going to jump him on. We're going to talk a little bit about Kobe Bryant and Gianna Bryant and the other lives that were lost early yesterday morning before we jump in and talk about everything when Dennis joins us. Alright, so as I talked about there in the intro, we'll have Matt and Dennis with us today. Matt back from his wonderful vacation in Disneyland, so we'll start with happy stuff first, as we obviously know a big bombshell got dropped in the sports world yesterday. So Matt, how was your vacation? Tell us about your wonderful trip to Disneyland, how all that went out for you and your wife.
Well, it was really exciting. You know, we went in last Monday, and we were there at the Disneyland Hotel for 6 nights, in the park for 6 days. Had a lot of fun. You know, they've opened, the last time I was there was in 2018, so that was pre-Galaxy's Edge. So I was really excited to hit up Star Wars Land. Did all the things, made a lightsaber. She made a droid at the Droid Workshop.
Very nice.
Got to go on the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride. Went on that several times. Tried some blue milk, which is neither milk nor that good. It's like a weird fruit slushy.
Nice.
Definitely was not expecting that. And then the big challenge, we did not know that when we booked this in August, we did not know Rise of the Resistance was going to open, and it opened 3 days before we arrived. So that was the real nuts thing. It's just insanely popular right now. You basically have to be in the park on the app the minute the published open time happens and request a boarding group and see if you make it on in the day. So like by 2 minutes into the opening of the park, you know whether or not you're going to be able to ride it at all that day. Mm-hmm. So Tuesday, we had 4 cracks. Basically, we were not in early on Saturday, but we had 4 cracks. Tuesday, got in right away. So that was pretty pumped because it was a lot lighter crowds when we were able to go. Wednesday, didn't get into a group. Thursday, didn't get in during the day. And then Friday, got in just barely, like around 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So it is incredible. It is, a lot of, I don't really want to give anything away, but they said if you got Disney Plus, there's an incredible show on there called The Imagineering Story.
Yes.
Which basically is 6 hour long episodes that tell you, going back all the way into the 50s when Walt Disney was there, how they built all the parks and attractions, not just Disneyland and Disney World, but European ones. You get to meet the engineers, how they think things up. In the last episode of that, they talk a little bit about Rise of the Resistance, and that the idea for them was that they wanted to put you in a movie. How do we make you in a Star Wars movie? And let me tell you, they found a way to accomplish it. It's probably about 15 minutes when you're on the ride. It is like 3 or 4 different types of rides all in one.
Wow. Sounds interesting. I can't wait. I mean, you know that I'm getting to go this summer with my kids. So, oh man, that sounds awesome. I cannot wait for it. I mean, I know we kind of talked a little bit here and there about the stuff that you were excited to do, and for me, it's going to be the same thing as visiting the Star Wars land and doing all that stuff. It is going to be more for me than my kids, I'm sure. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. There's really no easy transition into this. We're waiting on Dennis to jump on, and so me and you we're talking in the group chat, and I thought we might just do a little bit of this on air, as everybody has been talking about what happened yesterday in the crash that took 9 people's lives. And I do want to mention all 9 of them. We'll probably mostly talk about Kobe here because that's how it affects us in the sports world. But there were 9 people on that helicopter, including obviously his daughter Gianna. I'm sure I'm not going to say these last names right, and I apologize about that, but John Altobelli, his wife Carrie Altobelli, and their daughter Alyssa Altobelli, who also left behind their older son and daughter. One is about to go to college, one who works for the Boston Red Sox. I actually just retweeted a thing to try and help them out. Another teammate of theirs, Christina Mauser, I believe. Or I'm sorry, no, Peyton Chester. And then you have Sarah Chester, Christina Mauser, and then the pilot, Ara Zobayan, I think is how you say his last name. So obviously there was more than just Kobe and his daughter that were affected. That was the news that kind of went spread everywhere because it is Kobe Bryant, obviously. And we understand that, but I do want to say prayers for the other 7 victims as well, besides Kobe and his daughter, who are obviously, families are going through a very hard time knowing that they're not getting their father, son, daughter, mother, sister, brother, any of that back. It's a very hard time for them as well. So I'll open it up to you. I've kind of been all over the place on this. It's obviously very tragic for me. As a father, it hits harder to seeing the 3 teenagers that went. It still kind of hits me hard thinking about how hard that must have been to sit there with your daughter knowing the end was coming, and if he was able to even bring her any comfort in those final minutes, has got to be just terrifying.
Yeah. So we woke up yesterday morning, obviously at the Disneyland Hotel, and got driven to LAX. My flight time was at 12:01 p.m. Pacific. So I was actually in LAX. Our gate was right next to the Magic Johnson Sports Forum shop. When, and there's just Lakers paraphernalia everywhere because they've been having such a great season. A lot of people waiting in line for the plane wearing Lakers stuff. And that's where I was when I saw the news break, and, really kind of just devastating. Some of the early tweets and stuff had footage of the helicopter going down, which I didn't realize I was about to see until I was trying to catch stories before we had to go into airplane mode and spend a lot, probably a couple hours. It was a 2.5 hour flight, kind of thinking about that as we were taking off, going through the thick fog banks. It was hard not to think about that and be a little bummed out. I was born in California, lived in California for the first 31 years of my life. No California teams did I actually like except for the Lakers. That I used to watch those games with my dad. He was a big Laker fan. He picked us up at the airport. So we kind of talked about Kobe and the news and stuff like that driving home yesterday, and, watching stuff today, thinking about it. I had written about my appreciation for him as a player when he retired. I remember watching that his final game when he exploded for 60 points and how great that was. A couple of years ago, they had that animated short, Dear Basketball, which actually won the Academy Award. You can find it for free on YouTube. I would suggest looking that up. It choked me up when I watched it before he passed away. So when I watched it today, it was really hard. It's amazing to think he's gone. I'm sure you feel the same way now. When you're younger and you hear people talk about they're 40 years old. Oh, that seems, like a long way away. But there was a sense of, I'm 38. I'll turn 39 in May. And, I spent a long time kind of watching Kobe Bryant. It's weird to think, that he's gone. And then to have gone with his daughter, I thought was even more devastating. He was just, he was a really great player and fierce competitor, and by all accounts has spent, obviously he had some public failures, personal failures that a lot of people were real hot to try to slam and bring up on social media yesterday that I thought was kind of disappointing. He was human.
Yeah.
Wasn't perfect, but by all accounts, he has spent a lot of the last years, especially out of basketball, really working on being a husband and a father. I can't even imagine. We were talking about what it would be like, for his wife. His youngest daughter was just born in June.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's like I said. I hate to put it this way. I'm not really sure how else to say it. I'm obviously sad that Kobe's gone. I mean, everybody knows here, huge Cleveland everything fan. So it's not that I didn't like Kobe. I was, it's kind of like the same thing with the Patriots. You don't hate, you respect him, but you kind of hate him at the time for how good he was and how many championships they were winning back in the day. It was a little bit ridiculous. Now, granted, my Cavs were never really in it, so it's not like it bothered me as much as I know it did other people. But you had to respect Kobe from afar, from just the way that he played, and he clearly wanted to put himself in the conversation with his idol Michael Jordan, and I think he's always done that. You go back and look at some of the best players of all time, and the arguments you get between the three now are Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron. And it's always Jordan, Kobe first, because LeBron has not accomplished quite as much as Kobe and Jordan did in the league. And so I'm with you. Like, seeing everything he did as a player and everything that happened off the court, for me, is not nearly as interesting as what we've seen him become since he left basketball. It's like he started a whole new chapter of his life. Everybody's been posting the videos of him and his daughter, and again, is what makes it even more heartbreaking is, 41 is not old. You are still very much, in my opinion, in the prime of your life at that point in time. But not just Gianna, but the other two young ladies as well. I mean, their lives weren't even started yet, and they're no longer with us. And so that is, it's just a tough day all around, obviously, and as you said, Vanessa Bryant. I mean, I could not imagine. I mean, to lose your husband and your daughter on the same day, it cannot. I mean, just to those of us who have lost loved ones to begin with, and then those two have been, I believe, together since they were 17 years old, high school sweethearts. So he's literally been the love of her life, and then to also lose your daughter so closely to just having your other daughter born, I can't imagine is easy at all. And Dennis is ready to go, so we're gonna pop him on here to see what he has to add to this discussion. So we don't want to go too much longer on this. Just wanted to, again, say, obviously prayers to him and his family and the other victims. If you guys do want to help any of them in any way, you can find it. I retweeted a bunch of stuff on Twitter. You can find it anywhere. Just, I'm sure any little bit would help, especially with the other victims who are obviously not quite as financially stable either as the Bryants are. But just a horrible day all around for sports and everybody with, kids and everything that were affected by that tragedy. So Dennis is here. We're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about what we got wrong on our predictions for the AFC and NFC. Me and Dennis did our rookie talk last week on Friday, talked about how we had projected out the rookie rankings and what we got right, what we got wrong. So we're going to do that today with the predictions, my goodness, on our teams before we start getting in spending the rest of the week talking about, obviously, the biggest game of the year in the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. So before we jump into that, Dennis, how are you, buddy? Thanks for joining us, and how was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good. Had a kid with strep throat.
Oh, gosh.
So, other than dealing with that, the 14-year-old band seems to be coming along, though he needs to get to the point where he can play a lot more than just the intros to a whole bunch of songs, but his technique is coming along. So, got to be honest, I'm kind of proud to listen to him crank up the distorted guitar and start wailing. Makes me feel good inside.
It's always good to see your kids accomplish something, so I'm happy for you there. All right, let's jump in and just talk, really mostly, at least for me, how wrong I was, and some of us were on some of these teams that we predicted earlier in the year.
First and 10 at the Lions 29, and Prescott goes screen right. Elliott down the right side to the 25, to the 20, to the 10. Elliott to the pylon. Zeke Elliott, touchdown. 38 on the screen.
Second down at 10, takes the snap, gives it. Chubb runs, he's to the 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba Lubba Hub. 92 yards.
Left. Marshawn Lattimore, 12 yards from Adam. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side, caught by Diggs. Stay up! Oh my God! Oh my God! 30! No! 10! Touchdown! Are you kidding me? It's a Minneapolis miracle! Stephon Diggs and the Minnesota Vikings have walked up on the New Orleans Saints. It's a 61-yard Minneapolis miracle.
We'll start off with the AFC East, so I figure we'll just do it nice and easy. I'm just going to run down our 4 teams, and if you want to give any other talk on them or anything like that, feel free, but I just kind of wanted to go through what we thought at the beginning of the year and obviously how it did or did not turn out. I'll start first. I had the Patriots at 11-5, the Jets at 10-6, the Bills at 7-9, and the Dolphins at 3-13. So obviously I was very heavily bought into the Jets, as I'm sure a lot of people were, but I had them making the playoffs this year. Did not work out. Said earlier in the season, I thought some of that might had to have been with Sam Darnold's mono. Regardless, it just did not work out for them. And the Bills were clearly a lot better than I thought they were going to be. Having them go 7-9 and making it into the playoffs, obviously. So, Matt, give us your predictions for the AFC East.
I had Patriots 12-4, Jets 10-6, Bills 4-12, Dolphins 2-14. I had always thought there would be a second team in the AFC East that would be in playoff contention or make it in. I just was off Jets versus Bills, even more so than yours.
And Dennis, what about yours?
Oh, I had the Patriots at 12-4 and the Jets at 8-8, Bills at 7-9, and Dolphins at 3-13. So, I had the middle of it flip-flopped.
Yeah.
Obviously the Jets. They're not the Jets. The Patriots weren't quite as good as their first place finish might have led us to believe.
But we both got their record exactly right because they did finish 12-4.
We'll take what we can get. That's for sure.
Yeah,
let's end after that because we got one of the records right.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters. Because I can tell you right now. Just looking at the AFC North is really going to hit all of us pretty hard here. So let's take solace in what we can in some of these because it's not pretty when you go back and look at it. In the AFC West, Dennis, you go ahead and go first. How'd your AFC West shape up for you?
Let's say I had the Chiefs in first at 12-4, followed by the Chargers at 11-5, Broncos 6-10, Raiders at 5-11. Got the Chiefs right.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt, because we all have a very consistent team here in the top of the AFC West. So I want to jump. We'll talk about them for a little bit. So go ahead, give us yours.
Chiefs 10-6, Chargers 12-4, Chargers really screwed me, as we will see later when we talk about award predictions. Broncos 9-7. I blame that one on the referees, and the Raiders 5-11. So obviously, I think all of us thought Antonio Brown's shenanigans with the Raiders were going to hit them harder than apparently it did.
Yeah, so I had Chiefs at 11-5, Chargers at 11-5, Broncos at 8-8, and the Raiders at 5-11. So we were all buying heavily into the Chargers. What is it that you guys think went wrong with them? Because we also got some news today that they are moving on from Phillip Rivers. Do you blame all of the heartache on them?
He moved on from them first, to be fair, since he moved to Florida.
Very true. We know he's not going to be back. Whether he broke up with them or they broke up with him, it has ended. Their relationship will no longer continue. Yeah. Where do you guys blame the fault in the Chargers? Because I don't want to say it was just us. There were clearly a lot of people who thought the Chargers were going to have another year like they did the year prior, where, again, they were right there with the Chiefs in a chance to win that division. So what are your guys' thoughts on why the Chargers just completely kind of fell on their face this year?
Well, I think their defense underperformed some. They've got a lot of really nice parts on the defense, but they suffered some injuries. It just didn't quite gel. Melvin Gordon holding out while Austin Eckler was great for fantasy. I don't know that he necessarily was the answer for what they needed at the time. I think he's going to be fine going forward. I expect they're going to let Gordon walk, and they have to have some plan if they're letting Rivers walk and Gordon walk. Mike Williams came back to earth. He suffered a severe TD regression. So, they lost Hunter Henry for a long stretch to injury. So there were a lot of little things, I think, that just added up for them. That and Rivers' arm just isn't what it used to be. I saw somebody talking about Rivers going to Tampa today saying, it'll be the next Carson Palmer. I'm like, well, he's 5 years older than Carson Palmer when Palmer joined the Cardinals. So I don't think that's fair. But it wouldn't surprise me if, when all is said and done and it shakes out, if Rivers ends up back with the Chargers. Just because he moved his family to Florida. I mean, he's from Alabama, went to school in North Carolina, so most of his family lives over there. I would expect most of his wife's family lives over there. And, at some point they want to get the 17 grandchildren out where they can spend some time with the family on a regular basis. He wouldn't be the first quarterback to commute or, spend a good portion of the year away. So...
Well, I mean, the Chargers came out and said that they are moving on from Rivers and they will not continue with him.
I get that that's what they're saying. I'm saying that it wouldn't surprise me still if, when all things are said and done, they go, maybe Tyrod Taylor isn't the bridge we thought he was.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be Tyrod Taylor.
I think it's going to be Tom Brady.
Yeah. I think they're making a play because they're going into a new stadium. See, for me, I think a big part of, the Chargers have been homeless for 3 seasons, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And last year, they were road warriors. They were 8-0 on the road, 4-4 at home. They had some more regression on the road. I think just never having a home field advantage, and there was a bad, set of chemistry on that team. I think it wasn't just the organization that told Melvin Gordon, we don't need you to win. It was a few key players, including Rivers, that said, if he doesn't want to be here, that's fine. I almost think they got worse when he came back. I watched a fair amount of Chargers games, probably closer to the West Coast, and because it's my division. Mm-hmm. And I never thought they looked terrible in any games. They just weren't quite good enough to win. They probably had to me, I was surprised when I looked back and saw what their record was, because I didn't think they were that bad at any point all the way along. It just never came together for them. They would do little things, and their chemistry looked bad. And I thought their offense actually looked worse when Gordon came back. I don't know if part of it's because he wasn't ready or because there was a lot of drama going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers' whole body chemistry out there looked bad. I think he had given up on the team before he moved to Florida. So I'm not surprised that they said they're moving on. I didn't think he wanted to be there watching him in November and December. And there was a lot of times when he was getting booed by fans, and his coach publicly came out and said, I was pretty close to yanking him and putting in Tyrod Taylor. I don't think Taylor's the one they're going to go with going forward. I also don't think it's going to be Easton Stick, which was a lot of people's speculation on social media. I don't know if that's a move they're ready to make, but I think they'll go get somebody else and try to do something else.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that. I mean, you've seen all the rumors about Tom, and I would not be surprised if they try and make a push for him. I still think they'd probably try and draft a quarterback. I mean, they're sitting at 6. I believe they've got 2 first-round picks. So they can grab a good, I would imagine Herbert or Tua falls to at least 6. Really, you've got Cincinnati and Miami up there who are probably going to take quarterbacks, and then you have the Chargers. So I would imagine they're going to get one of those 3 guys. It's not out yet, so maybe a little bit of foreshadowing or giving something away. I actually think Herbert, I wrote a draft profile for him just recently for the Dynasty Nerds. I think that he lands in the Chargers, and I actually think that'd be a great spot for him as well. So it'll be interesting if they bring Tommy in for a year or 2, if they stick with Tyrod. I wouldn't be surprised if they stick with Tyrod just because Anthony Lynn has such a close connection with him and truly believes in him back from their Buffalo days. But I'm with both of you. I don't think he's the answer, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they draft a quarterback and do the kind of same thing Cleveland did a couple years ago. Let Tyrod start off the year and then let the rookie kind of work his way into the spot if Tyrod gets hurt or is not playing well. In this division, the other team we really...
you know what I was going to say, too? I wouldn't be surprised if we hear in a couple months that Rivers decides to retire, because he's the same draft class as Eli Manning.
Yeah.
And Ben's contemplated it a few times. You know, they were all kind of there together. 2004, so long, you know, it was a lot longer ago than we want to admit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either, especially if no other teams really come a calling. Like, I really think, you know, a lot of the reports when Eli talked about he was retiring, there was reports that he did reach out to some other teams to see if there'd be any interest, and he wasn't getting back the interest he thought, so he decided to retire. I would not be surprised, you're right, if Ben does the same thing. Before we move on to the AFC North, thoughts on the Raiders really quick, because we all had them at 5-11, and I mean 7-9 is really only 2 more wins than what we had, but they actually looked like a really good team for parts of the year. Going into Las Vegas next year, are we expecting them to compete? Maybe not for a division title, but for a wild card spot, or do you think they're still kind of in that 7-9, 8-8 area?
I think they have to solve some defensive problems, and they have to solve wide receiver. I mean, Darren Waller is their best wide receiver. And then Hunter Renfrow is their second best wide receiver. And Jalen Richard is their third best.
Yeah.
A lot of talk about Robbie Anderson coming there. Do you like that?
I don't hate it, but historically, wide receivers changing teams struggle that first year. And we saw it again last year with Odell Beckham. Yeah, Beckham is somewhat of a head case, but when you take into account a lot of the things that went on, you just watch star wide receivers changing teams often struggle, or very good wide receivers, and I think Robbie kind of falls into that. He's certainly not at the level of Odell Beckham, but I do think he could come in and help. But they just need more. They need a bona fide number one. They need a Julio Jones, a Cortland Sutton, somebody like that to come in. It's not Tyrell Williams. He's a 2. Renfrow is a great slot guy. Darren Waller is a big slot / tight end. He's a matchup issue. But they need somebody that is going to be able to carry, that can go out and get them, 12 receptions for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they don't have that guy right now. And then I'm not sure what's going on with Derek Carr. They like him, they don't like him, they're a little unsure. Carr, you hear all kinds of rumors about, well, they're not that into him, they were just giving him another chance. I don't know if he's the answer or if he isn't. It's so, some games he looked like the answer, in other games he looked like the question. So it really, they lack a lot of consistency. I think the only thing they really have going for him is that Gruden is not going anywhere. He's got probably 3 or 4 more years that he can continue to reshape this team without fear of getting canned.
Yeah, that you were saying they need wide receivers. This is the year to need them. This is going to be a loaded wide receiver class, so maybe they're able to really help out their wide receiver core if they don't get Robbie A. With some of the guys in this class. In the AFC North, the one caveat I'm going to give before we get to the one team we all had winning the division, the Steelers did lose Big Ben, so I do think that it's a fair little caveat to give because we all had them with a winning record here. Browns, I'll go first. I had the Browns winning the division at 10-6. I had the Ravens at 10-6, Steelers at 9-7, and the Bengals at 6-10. So obviously way too high on the Bengals. And again, the Steelers, I think a lot of that had to do with Big Ben. Clearly way too high. Well, I shouldn't say way too high, but too high on the Browns. Obviously bought way into that hype. Do think this could be a really interesting division moving forward, though, whether Ben does or does not come back. Having Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield likely as the three quarterbacks in the division, three young rising quarterbacks that could be very interesting. Matt, how did you have the AFC North shaping up?
I had the Browns and Steelers at 10-6, but I had the Steelers as the division winner. 9-7 for the Ravens, 3-13. I thought the Bengals were in bad shape.
I also had the Browns and Steelers at 10-6. I think I had the Browns winning the division. Ravens at 7-9 and Bengals at 3-13. The Browns, they were the Browns. I'm not sure going forward if we're going to see what type of changes we're going to see. Podesta won the power battle with Dorsey, and he brought in his guy Barry at GM. Now they've got a coach that Podesta wanted in Stefanski, and they have to rebuild that coaching staff. They kept Stump Mitchell. He's a holdover, and they brought in O'Shea from Miami. But other than that, they need to fill out the entire staff. So it'll be interesting to see who Stefanski and Barry bring in to be the coordinators and the rest of the position coaches. The team has some talent, and they just have to put it all together. And they need to invest some draft picks in the offensive line, I think.
Yeah, I think we all thought the Browns, with the moves that they made and some of the high-profile talent they had, would be there. There are a couple of teams that I think underperformed versus their roster. The Browns would be the big one in the AFC to me.
Yeah, I would say the Browns are easily, you could argue, probably the one that disappointed the most in the NFL, in my opinion. So them and the Cowboys, I think, are right there with each other. And those two have a lot of...
The Cowboys would be the other one that way underperformed against their roster talent.
They interestingly have a lot of similarities as well. So it's very interesting that those two are the ones that disappointed.
And now they both sent their head coaches to the Giants. So good luck, Saquon Barkley.
Watch the Giants win the Super Bowl next year. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Don't say hurtful things.
AFC South. Good night did I mess this one up big time. All right, so I was clearly a believer in Nick Foles and the Jaguars. I had them winning the division at 9-7. Texans at 8-8, Colts at 7-9, and the Tennessee Titans AFC Championship losers at 6-10. So I was not believing in them at all. Matt, how did you have the AFC South shaking up?
I had Jags 8-8, 9-7 for the Texans winning the division, and then 7-9 for both the Colts and Titans. I think when we did our preview episode, I basically said you could talk me into any order of finish in this division. And I think, we all, not Dennis, but the two of us plus our friend John had thought the Jaguars were due for a little bit of a bounce back season. They really kind of cratered. The Texans, 9-7, 10-6, not a huge difference. I think the Titans, part of my hesitation with them is I wasn't a believer in Mariota. If I would have been told, 6 games into the season he was going to be replaced with a Ryan Tannehill we've never seen before, I might have thought of them a little differently. But, I think if they would have done what they were doing for those first 6 games with Mariota throughout an entire season, 7-9 would have been an optimistic take.
Yeah, I didn't have high hopes for this division at all. I had the Texans and Colts tie-in at 8-8 with the Titans at 7-9 and the Jags at 5-11. Jacksonville it all come down to the quarterback issues for them, I think. while Minshew is a cool story, I think as a quarterback, he's a backup. I think he's a guy that'll get you a couple games, but I think he was just in there and he was overextended. I think if they play him as their starter next year, they're going to find out the same thing. I don't know if Foles is the answer either. Foles has had a couple amazing runs in his career, but he's never been able to sustain year-over-year success. And I think that, unfortunately, might just be who Nick Foles is. I loved the year that Leonard Fournette had, but it just couldn't, propel them up the standings. Indianapolis, losing Luck, and then Jacoby Brissett, he's a serviceable game manager type. It would have been interesting to see if they had a solid, healthy core of wide receivers. If they'd have had Funchess all season long, if they'd have had, maybe Durice Fountain or Deion Kane stayed healthy all year, didn't get let go. If Paris Campbell was healthy, T.Y. Hilton was healthy all year, Eric Ebron, they had some weapons for him to play with, but they just could never be healthy all year. So, Indianapolis was pretty snake bitten there. The run that Derrick Henry went on with with Tennessee, that was something. I was clearly wrong about him last year. I don't know how long a future he has with the style of play he has. But Houston went all in. Bill O'Brien got rid of the GM that he felt was holding him back, and he went all in on last year. Next year, he's going to have to hope these guys stay healthy because he's let a lot of draft capital go, and so he's got to hope people stay healthy now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting where this division goes. I mean, I think we can all too admit that we were wrong on Derrick Henry. I don't think any of us were fans of his earlier in the year on this podcast. So we were all clearly wrong about him. We were definitely his poster board material throughout the season because I think it took probably till week 9 or 10 before I even started believing in him. I was like, I guess you really have to leave Derrick Henry in. So not a great year for us on the predictions of Derrick Henry. Dennis, why don't you start us off on how you had the NFC North shaping up?
Oh, hold on. I got to scroll.
No, that's all right. Take your time. We'll fill her.
All right, NFC North. I had the Packers at 11-5 and the Bears at 10-6, Vikings at 7-9, and my woeful Lions at 6-10. I got the winning team right in the division. The Bears, I miss them. I just don't know. I don't think Trubisky's the answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, David Montgomery didn't get the ball near enough for my liking. I think Trey Burton showed us who he really is. It's interesting. We're doing a reset draft, and Adam Shaheen went in that reset draft before Trey Burton went. Mm-hmm. Not that I necessarily think that Mitch Trubisky can support Adam Shaheen as the starting tight end either. I don't think he's gonna. It's gonna come down. I think their target order is Robinson, Miller, Cohen. But the Packers, they won the division. They got the bye. They just, Aaron Rodgers. It looks like the end of the road might be coming for him. I don't know if he's disinterested. I know he's always had that sort of aloof, kind of away from you mentality. I don't really give a shit what you think kind of approach to the game. But it's starting to come off much more as I'm just not really interested anymore. I don't want to. Yes, I want to win, but I don't want to have to be the one that makes these guys good. I want guys that are good, that are smart, that'll be where I expect them to be. And I get it. You want people that know their job and can do their job around you. But at some point, when you got 11 players in an injury sport, lots of guys go out. Rodgers, I don't know if he's got the mentality anymore to put the team on his shoulders and will it to victory. I think he might be just running out of gas.
Well, I feel like the Packers could end up next year being what the Bears were this year, a team that was really strong, that maybe outperformed. I heard can't remember which columnist it was, talking about how the Packers he thought were a 10-6 team masquerading as 13-3, and that's certainly what they look like in the NFC Championship game. They weren't even close to competing with San Francisco. That score got closer than the game ever was. Watching the first half, they just had no answers. And if you look at their team, they have some talented but enigmatic players. That was why, my preseason predictions, I had the Bears at 11-5. I didn't think they were going to fall off as much as they did. A lot of questions about Matt Nagy. I think rightly, what was he doing? He seemed to figure it out and get that offense in better shape on the tail end of the season, but the first half they were an incredibly bad watch. And then I have the Packers and Vikings both 9-7. Some similar things I think about those teams, and then 7-9 for the Lions. I feel like the Lions had injury apocalypse, and they showed a lot more heart and fight in that first half of the season. I think they were a better team than their record indicated before they lost everyone.
Yeah.
It was, an incredible sight to watch. The Vikings and the Packers, it's going to be interesting to see what they do this off season. I have a few friends that are Viking fans that, are waiting for Kirk Cousins' third year to come and go so that they can move on. I think that's telling. They thought that signing, I think, was going to be the answer in the window. There's a lot of rumblings that Stephon Diggs wants out and will be shipped somewhere in the offseason. You could see the Vikings kind of start to shift and come apart. Obviously, lost both their coordinators, which will be interesting. And the Packers, they probably had the most unimpressive 13-3 season in the NFL. And I don't mean that, to be a total slam, but when you think of 13-3 teams, you usually think of somebody who is dominant in some aspect or facet of the game. I never really felt that from the Packers. I agree with Dennis. Some of the body language and reactions you get from Aaron Rodgers is interesting at times. Some of the way he seems to be communicating with his teammates is interesting at times. We know there's been on and off friction for him and his head coach. They have some good pieces on offense and defense, but I don't know if they have two really great squads, and it will be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see them be a 9-7 or a 10-6 team next year, and maybe drop down to a wild card. And you have to think Rodgers' window is closing. I think he's 36 now. That used to be an age where you saw
you were
people
done.
being done. We forget with Brady and Breeze and, Manning winning when he was 39, even though he was a shell of his former self. We think about these guys going on and on, but the great, invincible Aaron Rodgers days are likely over.
Yeah, so for me, I guess before I give mine real quick, what's interesting about your predictions, Dennis, is I know Matt wasn't with us, but we did the 5 in, 5 out episode, and you actually had the Bears out and the Vikings in. So if you would have stuck with that, you would have had it right. But we did that, I think, right after we did this one, so there's a little bit of covering all your bases, and I like it. It's smart on your part. Let's see here. For the NFC North, I had the Packers at 11-5, the Vikings at 10-6, the Bears at 9-7, the Lions at 7-9. What I will echo on what Matt was saying, and I do think the Lions did get kind of screwed there earlier in the season. They were right in a lot of those games. I think they could have beaten the Chiefs. I think they kind of got screwed. If it was week 1 or week 2 with the game, and then obviously the Packers game as well. So the Lions, I thought, much better than what they ended up being there. So Packers, I'm with you guys. I'm confused at what's going to be them. I do think if they can add maybe another wide receiver or someone that can make plays opposite of Devontae Adams, The offense might look a little bit better. We got to remember that this is a new offense. He's even openly admitted he's moving more into Matt LaFleur's offensive scheme, which is definitely different from anything he's had for almost a decade with Mike McCarthy. So maybe that has some to do with it. He did seem like he was getting beat up at times. So I'm sure at 36 years old, you're tired of getting kind of knocked on your ass. Although the Packers offensive line was, I think, top 5 in a time allowed for passing. So whatever happens with the Packers this offseason will be interesting, and if that keeps, and how much longer Rodgers has, because I know me and Dennis, we talked about it here just recently on the pod when Matt was off in Disneyland, that I still think Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So I do think he has a couple years left in him, but I think the Packers, as an organization, need to do a little bit more around him, especially on that offense, because that defense did really good this year. The NFC South, this is another division where I really got things wrong. I should have followed your guys' suit on the Carolina Panthers. I was all in. Matt and me and you have had discussions about this all season. I thought Cam Newton was going to come back healthy and the weapons they had around him. They were going to lead themselves to an NFC title division here. I had the Panthers at 10-6, the Saints at 10-6, the Falcons at 8-8, and the Bucks at 7-9. So Saints, Bucks, both really interesting right now. Saints, a lot of talk now. We saw earlier on Twitter that they believe Taysom Hill, quote unquote, is the franchise quarterback, which astounds me.
They're drunk.
Please, God.
But
I have so many dynasty shares.
They 29-year-old quarterback that's completed 6 passes in the NFL with a college completion percentage of 58%.
They're going to hire Tim Tebow as his quarterback coach.
There you go.
And mentor. And you'll have that Tebow presence on the sideline with Sean Payton and our boy and all my fantasy joy. It's just gonna.
Well, before you get too excited about Taysom Hill, they did say that if Breeze wants to come back, they will welcome him with open arms. He, from everything I read with the stuff he talked about during the Pro Bowl, was he's going to give it about a month before he makes his decision. Yeah. So we should know sometime within the next month if Breeze is going to come back or not. I would honestly be surprised if they went with Taysom Hill, but who knows? And then obviously the Buccaneers as well. There's a lot of talk that Rivers might go there and that they may move on from Jameis Winston. So a lot of teams, including the Panthers now, what they're going to do with Cam, new head coach. This whole team seems to be in flux outside of the Falcons. So, Matt, how did you have the NFC shaping up?
So, NFC South, I thought Saints 12-4, winning the division was pretty close there. I had Falcons 10-6. I thought they had a good team. I think they were a team that underperformed a little bit. Got off to a rough start, so missed that. Bucks 7-9. I think they actually finished 7-9. I think we were both right about that. And then Panthers 5-11. I didn't think Cam Newton was healthy, and I thought that was going to sink him. And for a little while, it looked like Kyle Allen might be able to reverse that, but not being healthy, it'll be interesting to see what happens to them in the offseason. I think they have a big question at quarterback too. With Cam Newton. So this is going to be an interesting division. My question for you guys would be, based on the Phillip Rivers we saw this year, would he be a massive upgrade over Jameis Winston?
No. I don't think so at all.
No, I agree. Well, my one thing with that is kind of something I've been talking about now with a couple people is this year is not going to necessarily stick with this statement because of how many times Rivers turned the ball over. But I wouldn't be surprised if Arians wants to bring in someone who's going to turn the ball over less than what Winston does, because that is what cost you games. Like, I get Winston can throw 30 to 50 touchdowns, but he also throws you 30
Rivers
interceptions.
Was throwing so many interceptions and turned the ball over so much down the stretch. That's why they wanted to bench him. That's what he's having trouble.
Oh, I agree. That's why I said it's not going to not make sense with what happened this year, but throughout his career, he hasn't been quite as turnover prone as Winston has been. I'm not saying it would be the smart move. I don't know what Tampa Bay is going to do. If I were Tampa Bay, I'd get a guy like Dalton, or maybe, well, I wouldn't get Mariota, but I personally would not bring back Winston. That's just my opinion, so.
It'd be hilarious if they dumped Jameis Winston for Marcus Mariota.
Actually, it kind of would. Dennis, how did you have the South shaping up?
So I came in with the Saints at 13-3, followed by the Falcons at 9-7, the Panthers 5-11, and the Bucks at 4-12. The Bucks don't have any running game at all, but when you see what Winston did this year with absolutely the worst running game in the NFL, and he led them to 7-9. Yeah, he's going to be on ESPN 30 for 30, but still, he's a baller, and they've got great wide receivers, 2 good tight ends that they underuse, and I expect at the very least Ronald Jones will be incrementally better. They're not going to cut him yet because of the rookie contract, but I think him and Barber will flip, and Jones has flashed a little bit. He's working towards that 5th or 6th year Justin Forsett breakout. Mm-hmm. But it's Tampa needs to stick. They need to stick with Winston. Franchise tag him if you need to. You don't need to commit to him 4 or 5 more years. But the team is building, and see if he can have that 2nd year impact, 3rd year impact. Arians, that is, on Winston like he did on Carson Palmer. And if he does, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Scotty Miller and Justin Watson, Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard, let's see if maybe they bring in a stud running back or something to boost that game. The defense, I think, outplayed their talent for the most part in Tampa. So as long as they can keep building on that, they're in good shape to compete. The Panthers, I didn't buy Cam being healthy. They won 5 games because Christian McCaffrey willed them to win 5 games. DJ Moore had a fantastic year. I think Curtis Samuel was like 3rd in the league in air yards. Just none of the quarterbacks that played could actually get the ball close enough to him that he could catch it. So something will come on. I think Greg Olsen finally retires and Ian Thomas will take over. But the Carolina defense wasn't great either. The Falcons, I think they're in the midst of that. They need to start to admit that. I think the Falcons are in position with Julio, Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman. They are, I think, are looking at it going, let's make one more run. And if they don't make it to the playoffs this year, then they break up the band,
including their coach, who got a
Yeah.
reprieve. The Bucks, though, I think the one thing you would also have to say in Winston's favor is they had the worst pass defense. If they weren't letting every game get into a shootout, you wouldn't be having as much pressure on your quarterback to try to fire it down the. I mean, some of those games he put up 40 points and they lost.
Yeah, that's why I think you move on from him. But that's just my opinion. All right, let's do NFC East. I'm so glad this turned out the way that I predicted because I got so much hate for being off the Cowboys here, and had the Eagles at 10-6, Cowboys at 8-8, Redskins I was a lot higher than I should have been, 7-9, and the Giants at 5-11. Cowboys, we'll see what happens. They're obviously one of the more interesting teams here. I mean, all 3 teams in the bottom of this division, Cowboys, Giants, Redskins, the way they finished, are all completely changing up their organizations for the most part with head coach changes and everything. So we'll see what happens with them. Eagles, they'll continue to keep winning and doing good things under Doug Peterson. Matt, how did you have the NFC East?
I had the Eagles 10-6 as the winners, Cowboys 9-7. I thought they had a lot of talent, but they had Jason Garrett as their head coach. Turns out I was one game too optimistic. Redskins 2-14, Giants 5-11. So actually I think the order of finish I ended up pretty correct. Not really surprised that 3 of these teams are making some kind of a change. The Redskins have to do something. They were probably the least appealing team to watch throughout this season. Even the Bengals, when they were losing, were throwing the ball some and looking fun. The Redskins were probably the toughest to watch in the entire NFL this last year.
I came in. I had the Eagles and Cowboys tied at 10-6, with the Cowboys winning the division. Giants at 7-9, and the Redskins at 4-12. I'm a big Zeke Elliott fan. I love what he does. I predicted Dak Prescott would have a career year, which he did. I think ultimately it was the defense that let the Cowboys down. Amari Cooper disappeared in a couple games like he's known to do. But overall, I think Dallas, they needed a change at head coach because I think it got stale. But they still have a lot of talent. It'll be interesting to see what McCarthy does down there. The Eagles, I missed a call from them to go try out at wide receiver. It was their wide receiver was a mess, and the fact that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside just did not step up really stunned me. I expected something to happen with that opportunity, and for Greg Ward to come in and essentially down the stretch be the number one wide receiver in Philadelphia. I mean, there's some thought, I suppose, that Ward approaches after playing quarterback in college, that he may approach wide receiver with a different knowledge base. And so that might have helped him. But still, Whiteside just didn't step up and do anything. Aguilar was just dropping passes. Oh, my God, that guy. I don't know what we're going to do with him. The running game was what the running game was. Sanders finally took over and showed that he was the guy, and they were led by their tight ends. Wentz looked good. So Philadelphia, overall, I think they have a really solid foundation for what they want to do going forward. It'll be interesting to see if the other teams can catch up. New York has a good running back, good young wide receiver, good tight end. So they've got some building blocks. I was disappointed in the way Haskins performed, but given the way that Jay Gruden handled him, I suppose I'm not necessarily surprised. He was only a one-year starter at Ohio State, and he's a young guy. He's got some growing to do. He started to come on a little better. I like the connection he had with McLaurin and with Harmon and with Trey Quinn, for that matter. But they were down, I think, at one point to their fourth-string tight end as well. Lost Darius Geist to a knee injury again, even though Adrian Peterson was in there just giving it the old college try. Peterson, he for where he's at in his career, super solid, 3.9 yards a carry or something like that. He's not going to give you a bunch of 10-yarders, but he's going to give you a whole bunch of 4-yarders.
All right, so the NFC West. Dennis, go ahead and kick it off. How'd you have the NFC West shaken out?
So I had the Rams at 11-5. I guess I drank the Jared Goff Kool-Aid, the Sean McVay Kool-Aid. I'm so embarrassed. Seahawks at 9-7, Niners at 6-10, and the Cardinals at 4-12. Let me see. Who did I have making the playoffs? Did I have a wild card team coming from there?
I don't think so.
I did not.
You didn't know, yeah.
Just had the Rams making the playoffs. So, that was pretty bad, Gurley's knee, Brandon Cooks disappearing. Hopefully that's just a lost season for Brandon Cooks. But Goff struggled. McVay didn't. For all of the 2018 adjustments he made, it seemed like in 2019 he could not make a single adjustment to that offense to get anything going. They were just so, and as I look over at their record now, their real record was 9-7. So I was only off by 2 games, but man, it sure seemed like they were so much worse.
Yeah, I had the Rams 11-5, 49ers 10-6. I had both those teams in the playoffs. I thought the 49ers would be better this year and would take a step into the playoffs. Didn't realize they were going to be quite so dominant. A lot of things came together for them. I had Seahawks 8-8. Didn't expect them to step up as much as they did, and then Cardinals 4-12. So I think the Rams and the Seahawks are probably bigger surprises. Rams just couldn't get it done. offensively they struggled at times, but the defense was kind of a bigger shocker. You rarely see a team who in the middle of the season ships out 2 Pro Bowl corners, what they did with Marcus Peters and Talib, and then trades for one, getting Jalen Ramsey. And I felt like their defense almost got worse. Don't know what they're going to do now. They have done the stars and scrubs thing for a while. They're probably in worse draft capital straits than the Houston Texans.
Yeah, they're going to be doing stars and scrubs for a few more years.
Yeah, for a while, but it backfired a little bit on them here. I was curious, what we saw with Tyler Higbee toward the end of the season, kind of an interesting move. I'd be curious to see if that continues, because he was one of those guys that was a surprise to me. They got kind of a splashy long-term extension early in this, in the preseason. I was like, I don't even think he's a big part of their offense. And then we saw he looked like one of the most dominant tight ends in football there for like a 4-game stretch closing the season. They're going to get some new blood, some new people in there. It looks like McVay's trying to make some adjustments, trying to figure some things out. I think a big question they're going to have to wrestle with is they invested a lot of money now in Jared Goff. His first year as a rookie, he looked like a total bust. And then when McVay came in, he looked great. This year, he looked somewhere in between. I'm not sure we know exactly who the real Jared Goff is yet.
Yeah. All right, so for me, this was probably one of my closest divisions that I got right. A lot of that was more John Hamler's kind of talking me into the 49ers. I was not quite as bold as him. I believe he went like 12-2 or something like that with them, maybe 13-3, which, he was close with that. So I went 10-6 for the 49ers, winning the division. The Seahawks at 9-7, Rams at 8-8, and then the Cardinals at 5-11. Just had the 49ers making the playoffs, though. I had the Seahawks getting beat out by the Vikings. So let's talk about our playoff teams really quick, since it's just you and me, Matt, or at least the whole world. We'll go, Dennis, the teams that you have in there as well. Before we jump in, talk about who we had as our MVPs, coaches of the year, and all that. So for me in the AFC, I had it as Chiefs, Patriots, Browns, Jaguars, Chargers, Jets. So I got 2 teams right out of all 6 in the AFC. But the NFC, I was actually very good outside of the Panthers. I had the Packers, Saints, 49ers, Eagles, Panthers, and Vikings. So obviously the Seahawks made it in instead of the Panthers. So how did yours shape up, Matt?
I had Chargers, Patriots, Steelers, Texans, Jets, Browns in the AFC. So, like you, got 2 Texans, Patriots. NFC had Saints, Rams, Bears, Eagles, 49ers, Falcons. So I had 3.
And Dennis, how did yours shape up?
The AFC had the Patriots, Chiefs, Browns, Texans, Chargers, and Steelers. So I went 3 for 6. And the NFC, Saints, Rams, Packers, Cowboys, Bears, and Eagles. Did the Saints make the playoffs, or did they lose out?
Yes, they did. So you went 3 for 6 as well there too.
So I went 3 for 6
13-3.
well.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I felt like they were playing it at the end to get in, but.
All right, so let's go just for fun. We'll see how we all had this play out. So, Dennis, like I said, you did not do this part of the prediction. So, if you want to give us yours, I don't know if you wrote yours down at all. Did you write yours down on where you thought the teams would end up?
Yeah, I picked the Chiefs and the Niners.
Okay. Oh, well, congratulations, buddy. You Nostradamus Bennett over here. All right. So, for me and
you didn't even pick the Niners in the playoff. I was like, oh, maybe he did.
They snuck in on a technicality. What are you talking about? They decided that they deserved to be there. That's what happened. So for me, we'll go round by round, Matt, real quick, and then we'll jump into our other predictions. So for me in round 1, I had the Browns over the Jets, the Jaguars over the Chargers, the 49ers over the Vikings, and the Panthers over the Eagles. What was your round 1?
Texans over the Jets, Browns over the Steelers, Bears over the Falcons, Eagles over the 49ers.
I had round 2, I had Chiefs over Jags, Browns over Patriots, Saints over Panthers, and Packers over the 49ers. Matt, what was yours?
Chargers over the Browns, Patriots over the Texans, Bears over the Rams, Saints over the Eagles.
And then to make it to the Super Bowl, I had Chiefs over the Browns, and wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. I had the Packers over the 49ers twice, so I don't know how I messed that up. But I had Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl with the Chiefs winning, so at least I got the AFC team right. So, Matt, what was yours?
I had Saints over Chargers in the Super Bowl, so the Sadness Bowl.
Yeah, we were both buying really hard into the Saints there at the end, too, which just makes that even more difficult. All right, so let's just continue to embarrass ourselves here a little bit more. So the NFL MVP, I mean, none of us were even close. I would say...
Well, actually, we don't know. Dennis has a shot because NFL Honors is Saturday night.
Dennis has a better shot than me and you do. I would say mine is even more embarrassing than yours, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. I had my boy Baker, the touchdown maker, as the NFL MVP. I really thought him and Freddie Kitchens were going to come in and turn the Browns around and make them into a playoff team. And if they did make it into the AFC Championship and lose to the Chiefs, I thought there was no way that Baker wouldn't be the reason why they got there. So I went with Baker. Matt, who did you pick and why?
I picked Phillip Rivers. I thought the Chargers were going to have a good season. I thought they were really underrated the year before and narrowly missed, winning the division because of those battles with the Chiefs. So I will say at least your MVP pick is still on the team. So
yeah,
you may have a stronger case than me.
And Dennis, the closest out of the three of us, who did you have as the MVP this year?
I went with Aaron Rodgers, but by no means do I think he had a MVP type of season.
I don't know. His team was 13-3. You still have a shot.
Yeah. Nah, I don't think so.
All right, Coach of the Year. We'll start with you, Dennis. Although me and you both had the same person, so I'll let you take this one. Who did we have winning Coach of the Year?
We had Freddie Kitchens, and I don't think I didn't expect the Browns to go deep into the playoffs. I didn't expect them to be in the Super Bowl.
Right.
I did expect them to be at the top of the division, though. I felt like there was chemistry there, and oftentimes when you catch lightning in a bottle and the chemistry is just right, it can obscure the inexperience while shit gets figured out. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Freddie just turned out to be, he didn't. I think if Freddie had went in and said, "Hey, Todd, I need you to call the offense while I learn how to be the GM of this team, or the GM, the on-field guy that's in charge, the CEO." Rather than insist on being the play caller and try to do everything and be buddy. I spent a long time in restaurant management. And one thing that I the way the teams were structured was I spent a good portion of my career as a kitchen manager or front of the house manager, assistant general manager. And my job was to be the hard ass so that the GM could be the nice guy. And I think Freddie is naturally a nice guy. And I don't think he let his coordinators be the ball busters that they needed to be. If he had turned that offense over to Monken and let him run it and put the clamps down on everybody and keep them in line, we might not be here. We probably wouldn't be talking about him as Coach of the Year or Baker even as MVP given the season Lamar Jackson had. But Freddie might still be the head coach, and Monken might be, they might really be something to behold. But the way they went about it, it was just a train wreck.
And Matt, who did you have?
Well, I was bought in on the Chargers, so I had Anthony Lynn.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously, none of us were going to win that. I had Freddie Kitchens as well. So, Rookie of the Year. I actually don't think all three of these were bad picks at the time. Obviously, one of them, unfortunately, just with the way that team went. Me and you, Dennis, kind of talked about this when we did the rookie episode the other day on why that didn't work out. So, in the AFC, me and Matt both had Devin Singletary. And then in the NFC, I had Kyler Murray. Both had good years. Obviously, would have loved to see more out of Devin Singletary. I'm sure the injury hurt some, and as you mentioned on the episode Friday, Dennis, the them leaning so much on Frank Gore when they didn't need to really kind of hurt Singletary as well. I think Terry McLaurin's probably going to end up winning it. I'm interested to see who wins it this weekend. But those
it should be A.J. Brown over Terry McLaurin.
Oh, you think so? I don't. I think Terry McLaurin was more
Brown
consistent.
had a 1,000-yard season for a team that didn't have a passing offense.
Yeah, but most of that was at the end of the year. I feel like Terry McLaurin was more consistent throughout the year.
He was great at the beginning of the year, but he was unplayable in fantasy down the stretch.
Oh, it's not all about fantasy, though. It's fantasy for us.
But fantasy equates to your production on the field. What I'm saying is he would have had a better chance if Dennis was throwing him the ball than Dwayne Haskins.
How dare you insult Mr. Haskins on this fine podcast,
all right,
sir.
He would have had a better opportunity if no one was throwing the ball than Dwayne Haskins.
It's even worse. Why you gotta throw Haskins? He's never gonna come on here now, alright? That's my goal, is to get as many Buckeyes on here as possible.
I hope so. I don't want to get any of that stink on us.
It's just uncalled for. Dennis, who did you have to win the Rookie of the Year?
I had David Montgomery. Unfortunately, he fell prey to the smart coach that didn't run the good running back. I don't know. When your head coach is sitting up in a press conference and going, I know I need to run him more. I'm not an idiot. And then 2 games later isn't running him. It's like, no, you're a fucking idiot, dude.
Yeah, that was that was funny. We talked about that obviously a little bit on Friday's episode with the rookies. It's confusing to me as well.
Well, it was brutal because Montgomery, I think we both thought he had great talent and opportunity, and he still does, but that entire Chicago offense was an enigma.
Oh, yeah. And then last but not least, Matt, this was one that me and you discussed, and we could not have been more wrong. I was right there with you on this. So who was our pick to be the fantasy MVP of the season?
Let's all pour one out for my last Chargers selection, Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
Who, I thought that, I think you and I both thought that while Eckler was a great receiver, that Jackson was going to end up getting quite a share of the rushing load with Gordon gone. I didn't think Gordon was going to come back at all. I thought he would Le'Veon Bell this season. And he came back, but even before he came back, it was like, do they remember Justin Jackson plays for them? And then he got hurt. And that spiraled into the toilet.
Didn't remember Justin Jackson played for them.
Yeah.
Well, now he is the only running back under contract, so maybe they will remember he plays for them because both Eckler and Gordon are free agents.
Nope, they'll sign someone like Adrian Peterson or Frank Gore, and Justin Jackson will continue to sit the bench.
How dare you?
Yeah, I was, we talked about this throughout the year. Even when Eckler was going off in the first couple of weeks, we're like, yeah, but Justin Jackson's still gonna come on, guys. Just give him a shot. And, oh, man, if only
someday my Justin Jackson and Taysom Hill shares are gonna pay off, probably at the same time. And then, I can die.
You're going to be destroying it in the fantasy world. Until then, it's probably not going to be looking good for you. Yeah, it's if only we could go back. It would have been we could see how wrong we were going to be. But guys, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about what we got wrong. After this episode, we will be now moving forward, and we are going to spend the rest of the episodes this week talking about the Super Bowl. Should have a really good one between the Chiefs and the 49ers. After we recap it at some point in time next week, we'll be going full 2020 prospects, everything. No point in that much in looking back from here forward. So appreciate both you guys for
the season we had.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think definitely time to flip the page. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining me. Look forward to talking to you guys later this week.
Right on.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
New Year's resolutions are hard, but starting 2020 with the best entertainment during the Xfinity New Year, New Gig Sale is easy. Now that's simple, easy, awesome. Click, call, or visit us today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas.